Welcome to Season 2 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Join hosts Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country as they dive into the world of parks and recreation with a surprise guest each episode. Laughs, leadership, life. This is RecLess.
Welcome to RecLess. This is episode 25, our third episode of season 2. So we're right in the thick of season 2 already. Really excited to be with you all today as we bring you along our quest to share the inside info on the world of parks and recreation. As always, I am here with my co-hosts, Jay Tryon and Shane Mize. How's it going today, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
It's great, man. Happy to be here.
Awesome, guys. Well, I'm Tom Venniro. Today, I'd like to start off with a little opener that's somewhat related to some of the items that we've talked about before. I think recently we've talked about one of the most, fast on your feet type of situations where you had to act and get creative. We also, on a few episodes ago with Dan Mason, talked about creativity in marketing and how you really get the word out to make that experience special for your users and your participants. So today I want to talk about, again, related to that, innovation. I've been told by a lot of people that innovation, or I think a lot of people at least subscribe to this, is that you don't necessarily have to have that first idea, but being brave enough to take what's being done maybe in the initial stages and implement that into your own agencies. I feel that, there are people out there who are extremely innovative and they will be the first. But we live in a world now where it is hard to be the first, right? And I think, Shane, you do a great job at that. I think Pflugerville and everywhere you've been, you tend to put a real interesting twist on T-shirts and programs and services and facilities. So I really have always looked up to you for that. And, we take a lot of those ideas, and if we can't come up with them first ourselves, we implement them. So what I want to just hear from you both today is maybe just one example of where you felt that your agency or your efforts have been really innovative.
There's so many, right?
Man, Shane he's not shy about bragging about his innovation.
I said something, I think at NRPA at the presentation I did with Ryan. I look at innovation like, what's that card game where you flip over a card and then you try to find its match? What's that card game called? Is it just called Match?
Memory?
Just memory?
Okay.
Memory, I believe.
Sorry.
Yes. I've got one right here if you want to
Probably
play.
the simplest title game of all time, just memory.
And my memory failed me on it. I look at innovation a lot like I look at that game of memory. Like, innovation for me and how I find success in innovation is I will see something very interesting. And I think the one that I would say for this example is the master plan that we did last summer for the Pflugerville Parks and Rec Open Space Master Plan. We wanted to have a world-class public engagement. That was one of the things I was really pushing for. And during Katrina, so what's that, 12 years ago, that storm that hit New Orleans and in the Gulf Coast and all the impact that it had, there was a city planner, Candy Chang, who went to some of the blighted parts of New Orleans, put up plywood on areas that had been destroyed, and chalkboard painted that plywood and wrote with stencil, I want this to be something. So people could come in and say a library, a corner store. And it was kind of a way for city government and developers to go through and see what that community wanted. And I thought that was fascinating. What a great way to engage the public at their own time, at their own pace, and get a groundswell of support for something without going door to door, without having an open meeting. And so that was, for me, that was a game of memory, right? I saw that card. I was like, wow, that was really cool. And I put it face down and I continue to play the game of Parks and Rec and trying to innovate where I can, picking up different cards as I find a match. 15, 14 years later, we're working on a master plan and we were trying to figure out a way that we could get into every community in Pflugerville. Ultimately, we created a chalkboard trailer. We took a float that for us was primarily used as a parade float for our council when we put them on parades for 4th of July and Christmas parades, things like that. We took that parade float and we converted it into a chalkboard trailer where all four walls essentially had chalkboard paint and plywood on it. And then we drove that 140 miles everywhere into the community. And on that trailer, it said Parks Matter Because in stencil. And people, we could park it, we could engage the public, we could have programs or events, and people could walk up casually and write why parks matter, and it was because it's a space for them to recreate, because they get to hang out and with their family, whatever it was, people got to write that. And we got a lot of acclaim for that. The Austin Statesman showed it. We've won some awards for that engagement, but I didn't innovate that in and of itself. Like that was, for me, it was the memory game of that was something that was applied in a different aspect years ago. And I held on to it and found a way to apply it. Didn't shoehorn it in, didn't make it have to. The whole time I was in Missouri City, I never used that, right? The whole time I was in Hutto, I never used it. I was waiting for the right opportunity to use it. But that's really what innovation has been for me, is seeing really cool things, not always in Parks and Rec, but in our world, and saying that's a cool concept. Someday I would love to find a way to apply it. And my agencies that I've worked for have had some great success doing those types of things.
That's great. How about you, Jay?
So I'm gonna actually share two things. One is from Mecklenburg that is kind of piggybacking off what Shane just said. The last thing he said about taking something and implementing it. And we have a leadership academy, and our leadership academy is typically a 9-month program that staff have to apply for, and you go through a variety of educational classes, speakers, you get paired up with a team, and you do a project. And the innovation piece of it that I want to mention is the project. And I think what's really unique about this project is we allow the group members that are on a team to identify a challenge or an initiative that they would like to see implemented in our department. And we give them a budget. We tell them, hey, if your team wins, so there's 4 teams in the leadership academy or 5 teams, we as the leadership cohort and the committee will actually choose the winning team. We'll implement that project. So it makes them think outside the box, and it makes them think of something that, hey, what is something that we don't do, or so what is something that we currently do, but that can be improved upon. And typically you may not have a budget for something like this, but we set aside funds. And some of the examples that have been implemented over the years, we actually, this past year, had a group that said, hey, we all have different scheduling software. Like there's 6 different divisions. The park ops division uses this type of software to do their scheduling. The center side does one thing. The aquatics world does one thing. What if we all got on the same software, so that if I'm at a rec center and I need to call park ops to see who's a park ranger that's on shift this certain day, like I can look at their schedule, because right now you can't look at everyone's schedule. So that was kind of a thought that was outside the box, and a little bit of innovation for the staff side. From the public side, I want to give kudos to Katie Keller. When we were in Indian Trail together, she always had very unique ideas from a marketing perspective, or ways to engage the community that, in our situation, we were a newer department trying to grow things, so we had to think differently. So it wasn't necessarily one program that was innovative, but the mentality was always, let's take a different approach to things, because we don't have a foundation of people that's already registering for our programs or coming to our events because they don't know we exist. So doing pop-ups at parks with different events and showing up and just having ice cream sundaes like ready for kids on a school day out at a playground that you may not know we were going to be there, but all of a sudden, hey, we're showing up with ice cream sundaes, and the kids are obviously going to come flock to us. The parents want to talk to us because who is this person giving us ice cream? Or doing a tie-dye event at a school day out event, and or going to the after school programs at the schools and running games and sports with them and giving flyers so the parents can know that we have a movie night or a concert in the park this weekend. So not completely brand new innovative ideas, but it was the approach that we had to take to make sure that the awareness was there for the community.
That's great, Jay. I want to go somewhere similar with that, with the public side and the engagement side. And I'm going to go back to a time where we talk about the 5 letters that we dare not say anymore. And that was during COVID. And I know that was a long time ago, but Dan Mason shared a lot of really great ideas of how they, obviously a baseball team, right, where they couldn't play, How did they engage their stadium and get people there and get people in the door? And so, I go back to that, and that was a really great time for us. We felt like we were really providing a service that wasn't really available elsewhere, or at least locally, right? And so one of the first things we did was an all virtual experience guide in the months of late April to early June. So, we started with just doing some of those social media programs that everybody was doing and saying, hey, engage with us this way. And then we were like, let's turn this into what we do on a regular basis, but make an actual guide that has all of these types of experiences for all ages and how they could engage with us. It worked out really well. It was just so well received. We ended up then, of course, transitioning that to the parks when the weather turned. And so everybody was doing these drive-in events, right? So, of course, that's not too unique or innovative, but we tried to take it a step further. Anything that we could do a drive-in, we were trying to do a drive-in for. So we brought in, for example, a petting zoo. So you couldn't really go to petting zoos anymore, right? But we brought in zoos that the owners of the animals would spread them out throughout the parkway and put them in different pens. And the kids, they'd be out the window. Occasionally a kid would get out, and they were kind enough to let them go and pet the animal. Of course, they weren't going to tell them no. That wasn't the intention. But it was, again, a really, at least from what I saw, a pretty unique idea. Transitioning into the summer of that year, we had our sports leagues coming up, or at least in this case, baseball and softball. It was tough. It was tough to play sports during COVID and the regulations, at least that we had here in New York. And going back to the NRPA conference of 2019, so the year before, we met a vendor who was there for the first time, I believe, and it was Quickball USA. And we took this Quickball. We were just like you, Shane. We were sitting on it, waiting for a time that it made sense for us to maybe implement this. And that was the perfect time. This Quickball was a variation of baseball that spread everybody out. It had literally markers for people to stand. So, you weren't going to have people converging onto the ball. In typical or traditional baseball, you're sharing helmets. You're sharing all types of equipment. There was no need for any of that equipment because it was more of a hybrid of baseball, wiffle ball. It was a great program, and we actually still use Quickball to this day with the younger levels for baseball because it's a more instructional based, as I mentioned, not every child converging on the ball type of baseball model that is really nice to teach them the fundamentals and really transition them into what you would call more of the traditional baseball. So, that was a time for us that we really had to put that on display and try to think outside of the box. I know all of our agencies did, but definitely a time we were really proud of some of the efforts that we made. So I appreciate you all sharing a story with, or in Jay's case, 2 stories. So we're going to have a new nickname for Jay soon.
Someone's got to do it.
That's right. That's right. Today we have a really great guest. And so I'd like to jump right into there. One of our favorite opening clues, which I'm sure doesn't get old to any of our listeners. Our guest is an Academy member.
Okay.
All right. Our guest, over 25 years in the field of parks and recreation. Our guest profile picture, by the way, is a picture.
Smokey!
Yes, labeled Smokey, and a really great Halloween photo that maybe they can share a little bit more on when they reveal themselves. Our guest.
What year do we think that picture's from?
Oh, that might give away a guest.
I know, but I'm going to wait on that. So,
okay.
All right. So our
Is
guest.
Tom in that photo? No.
Our guest participated in their undergraduate studies in economics and then went on to pursue their master's in Parks and Rec, and their master's was received in Southern Illinois. Our guest is a second-generation Park and Rec professional who witnessed their mom's agency win a gold medal at their first national conference in 1997 in Kansas City. So it wasn't his mom. Well, there you go. I already just gave up.
There we go. Now we're talking, folks. Now we're talking.
The Tom of old is back. All right. It wasn't our guest's mom's first conference, but it was their first conference. So a really special moment to be able to witness their family winning a gold medal. We do all know this guest. Their first job in Parks and Rec was a job created for them in marketing, a marketing manager position in Lafayette Parks. Anything yet?
Lafayette what?
Indiana.
A Midwest person.
Well, I'll throw you off a little bit. Our guest also had a position in, I believe it's pronounced Rolla, Missouri, which is close to a former guest of ours, Jody Adams.
Isn't Missouri still Midwest?
I didn't say that it was in a different part of the country. I just said it was a different state. All right.
Okay.
Now, here's an interesting one. Our guest worked and spent 2 years as a consultant working for Pros Consulting. Eventually, in that 2 years, worked on their current agency's Central Park Master Plan schematics process. So very interesting.
I know who it is.
Came out of consulting to end up starting their I guess their career in their current profession back in Parks and Recreation. Jay, I think you have an idea.
So I know who it is, and this person is actually on my list to invite.
I'm sure they are.
I am thrilled to have this person on this call today.
Shane, anything?
I think it's someone that was at Pros.
Well, I could tell you that they were at Pros let's see, 2005, I believe. It was prior to that. If I'm not mistaken, it was in that time frame that they started in their current role, or I'm sorry, not current role, with their current agency. They've been in the current role as a director for the last 5 years. If no guesses. All right, no guesses. Welcome, Michael Klitzing, Director of Parks and Recreation for Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation.
What?
Michael.
Good to see y'all.
I had him on my list too. I talked to him before we ever even started this stupid podcast about it.
I could tell
That's
you,
awesome.
Secrecy ever since,
That's great.
There are a few guests out there who I ask or want to ask, and I say, you know what? There's no way Jay and Shane have not yet, right? So I know that that Michael was going to be on your list at some point. So I was just thrilled that Michael was willing to accept my invite. And Michael, I've known Michael for some time now, and really, I look up to Michael and everything Carmel Clay does. They do a phenomenal job. It relates a lot to what we started off our opener with, and that's innovation. A master of innovation. It almost feels like innovation is an expectation at Carmel Clay. And so I had an opportunity to attend Michael's session, Reimagining Parks in Dallas. And first of all, it was on Thursday, and it needs to be on the Tuesday or Wednesday, because what Michael and Carmel Clay have to share is something that the majority of people who attend should be able to experience. And actually, Michael's wearing right now something that plays into that innovation. He's wearing it was at Illinois University, Michael?
University of Illinois.
University of Illinois.
Oh, watch out.
Quarter zip. Okay, quarter zip. Shane, you're wearing a Rochester Red Wings hoodie.
Shout out to Dan.
Yep, you purchased 2 weeks ago after our season 2 guest 1, Dan Mason of the Rochester Red Wings. And speaking of innovation, I love this idea. Today is the first Friday of the month in Carmel Clay. That would be what you would call, let's see, Fan First Friday, correct?
Fan First Friday. So all of our employees are required to wear uniforms so that the community can very clearly identify who works for Carmel Clay and that they're employees of the department. And also to ensure that regardless of the position that they have, whether they're in our before and after school program, at our community center, in administration, or our Parks and Natural Resources team, that we all are identified and part of Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. We're working collectively for a shared vision. But because we have uniforms every day, we have some days that are set aside for being a little bit different. So we set aside many years ago, Fan First Friday. So the first Friday, you get to wear your favorite team. Doesn't matter what it is. You can change teams up from month to month. We also allow during tournament season, if your team's in the NCAAs or in the playoffs, whatever, that you can wear on game day your team's colors. We also have a variety of other days where we'll have our culture committee will put together some activities that we have themed days. So those opportunities are in the after school program. We include the kiddos into those themes as well. But having to show off my alma mater for my undergraduate degree. So
fun stuff. And I want to just jump right into some of the innovation that you all really exhibit in Carmel Clay. So you are since your time in Carmel Clay, you're a 2-time gold medal winning agency. And when I attended the session in Dallas, really the whole session was reimagining, and it goes back to what I had talked about before, COVID. Just more than doing that and beyond COVID. And one phrase that you had mentioned in a project that you're working on that really resonated with me from a perspective or standpoint of what we're trying to do here is that you're trying to be the mecca of play in Carmel Clay. And you have a really, really cool and exciting indoor play project or indoor play space project on the horizon. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Tom, I'd love to. One of the things that we did with our current comprehensive master plan is we're a relatively young park system. 1991 was when we were established, but most of our growth has been since about 2006, 2007. And we knew that even though we're relatively new, a lot of our playgrounds are around that, or were around that 20-year time frame when it was time for them to replace. So we had a Reimagining Parks initiative, which was basically renovating all of our parks and upgrading our playgrounds. Our oldest playground now is 13 years old. Our second oldest is 8 to 9 years old, and all the rest of them are 3 years or less. But the one thing that we're missing within the community is an indoor playground. We're in the Midwest. This time of year, it's either cold, or right now it's not so cold, but it's really messy out there. So we need an opportunity for the families to be able to get their kiddos out, play, and have an incredible experience. And we want our playgrounds to have their own identity, be unique, feel special, something that you don't see in every city. And we focused that on the outdoor playgrounds, but we were looking at our community center. And I think the three of you are well aware, and maybe some of the listeners are too, but we're a high cost recovery agency. We are mandated to achieve 100% cost recovery with our community center, as well as all of our recreation programming. And when we're looking at decisions, we are trying to identify things that will enhance park and recreation experiences, but also contribute to our sustainability, which we also look at from a financial standpoint. And for the community center, what we see, we've got a huge water park that's connected to the Mona Community Center. And we see our memberships sort of do this cyclical thing throughout the year, where this time of the year, we're booming with memberships because of New Year's resolutions and wanting to be inside and get fit. And then we sort of see it cycle down a little bit, and then water park season opens and the membership spike again for water park season. And then after the kids go back to school, they go back down. We kind of continue this hills and valleys. And what we're looking to do is, one, build upon the playground experiences we have on the outside, but also create a feature in our community center that is going to be unique, unlike any of the other indoor playgrounds around here. And there's not a lot. I mean, the closest one is a good solid 20 minutes away. Which isn't that far in some places, but here 20 to 30 minutes, you might as well be on the other side of Earth, is the mindset. So we are creating this indoor playground, transforming a space that we use for our on-site babysitting service for the community center, as well as an underutilized space that's next door, and creating this place that's part of the membership base or the day pass rate, that people can come in. It generates our revenue. We're actually using some of the accumulated net proceeds from our fees that we've charged over the years to reinvest in the facility to create this amenity that is then in turn going to contribute to the cost recovery of the facility. And we're trying to, it's indoors, so you have the same, safety surfacing and playground safety standards apply. So how do you get a really dynamic playground in a place that doesn't have a lot of opportunities for fall zones? So what we're doing is using a system that's called Lucky Climber. There's playgrounds in children's museums, and we have one on our Monon Boulevard here in our downtown area. The Children's Museum in Indianapolis has one, and they're all throughout the country and world. But they're basically a climbing structure that's very architectural. They're kind of post and have these pedals that are interconnected with netting around it, so you don't have to worry about them ever getting outside the netting, so you don't have the fall issues. But then we're going to have lights, so the different pedals will light up, and some of the pedals might actually make a musical noise as you come up on it. We're going to have 2 slides. I mean, this is going to be a huge structure, occupying about a third of the space within this relatively large combined room. And we really believe it's going to be something that is going to be, serving a huge need within the community, helping drive people to the Monon Community Center and keep their memberships, especially those with families and smaller kids, between the summer seasons, and just be something that continues to distinguish us as a different type of agency. So I'm super excited about that. We're finishing up planning for that. Hope to start construction this summer or fall, and hope to have it open. It's probably, I want it to take 6 months, so it means it'll take 12 months to construct. So it's probably next winter, next fall when it's open to the public, but super excited about that. And one of the things that I know our team's very excited about too.
Will it have a cost recovery function to it as well?
Well, it does indirectly. So because it is behind the control points, it will be part of the membership or day pass. So we know that it will help drive attendance to the Monon Community Center, which in turn, drives the sale of membership passes or day passes to use it if you're not going to come on a frequent basis but still want to enjoy it. So it definitely drives into the cost recovery. It's being built because of profits we've made from the cost recovery. So, it's definitely, and then hopefully it's going to continue to contribute to the cost recovery so that we again can build up our reserves and do another renovation within the facility.
And will you double charge Fisher residents? We had Sarah on, and Sarah told us there's an Eagleton / Pawnee correlation to Fishers and Carmel.
We are the Eagleton of Indiana. We embrace that. It is who we are.
You don't want any Fisher people in this facility then.
Although
look over the
Fisher is
fence.
the one that has the huge rates to go see their indoor or their outdoor swimming beach. They charge, like, if you're out of county, like $50 to go to their parking lot and stuff. So it's like we're actually more welcoming of outsiders. So
Eagleton's not so bad.
If Fishers wants to spend our money in Carmel, we're all about that. So
okay,
that's right.
So you actually mentioned the cost recovery model and that it's mandated. And I think a lot of people have done different analysis on cost recovery models. We're actually doing a big fee study right now for our department. And I've always looked at Carmel Clay's model and I've always been very intrigued by it. But when you say it's mandated, who has set that mandate? Has that been a goal of the department, or is that by the elected officials? And how long has that been in place? And whose idea was it to set it at that price point?
So the mandate dates back to the Central Park Master Plan, which was originally adopted in 2002. I came on board to the department in 2004. So between that time frame was when we were working on the schematics and the operational models for the facilities there, including the community center. But even before I was involved, there was an expectation for high cost recovery. And then by the time I was hired, and not driven by me, I've never been afraid of cost recovery because every agency that I've been a part of has had a cost recovery mandate, at least for one of their facilities, if not the department. But it transformed from the time that I was hired by the elected officials to the time that we opened the facility to 100% cost recovery. So it was very much driven by the elected officials and a desire to ensure that additional tax dollars weren't needed beyond subsidizing the construction of the facility in the first place. So that was a decision that was made at the community level by the elected officials and has been mandated since we opened that facility in 2007. So that's where the root of it is. One of the consultants was Pros Consulting, so Leon Younger has also never been shy of advocating in the appropriate locations because cost recovery isn't for every agency. And I always try to stress when I'm doing my sessions as well that, our values, our cost recovery is based on the values of our community and the expectations of our community. And every community has different values and expectations. So what we're doing specifically from a cost recovery standpoint might not always fit for every community and most likely won't fit for every community. But some of the practices that we've put in place to achieve that cost recovery are the things that can be emulated and modeled in their own agencies, adapted for their own purposes. And even if you're going from 20% cost recovery to 40% cost recovery, or for us as an agency that we're at 85% cost recovery, those incremental changes may give your agency a little bit more money so that you have a little bit more freedom to make decisions on your own as opposed to being solely driven by tax dollars. So that's one of the ways that we look at it. But yeah, we were very much driven by the expectations of the elected officials.
And you mentioned it from the community center aspect and the programming center and the programming just in general. What about special events? Is that tied into that at all, or is it just primarily those two other?
So it's primarily those two areas. Great question, Jay. for us, we're kind of a unique entity. Our name is kind of weird, Carmel Clay. We were formed through an interlocal cooperation agreement or partnership between the city of Carmel and Clay Township. Both of them have overlapping jurisdictions. Townships can be bigger than cities. Actually, cities can be bigger than townships. But when we were created, the city hadn't fully annexed into the township. So the two units of government, which both have the authority under Indiana law to create park systems, created a park system. And help me remember the original question. I went on my tangent, which I sometimes do. If any of you know me, my staff.
No, you're good. It was just
refocus me.
It's about special events. I didn't know if special events were incorporated in that model.
So anyway, special events don't fall within the park system. They actually fall to the city of Carmel.
Gotcha.
In the early days of the park system, we did special events before the community center opened, before we took over the before and after school program for the school district. But what happened is, and these were the early days of marketing, and our marketing team, including I know someone that you all know well, Lindsay Labus, when she was our marketing director. They were so effective at driving people to our events and to our programs. And what we were finding is that our events were exceeding the carrying capacity of our parks. And we have a very strong environmental stewardship mandate also within our park system. Kind of interesting, environmental stewardship, which isn't always about cost recovery, and then cost recovery sometimes can be counterintuitive, but they actually do work together pretty well. But what we were finding is we were having to park people in the natural area, so we're destroying this one of our core values as a park system. At the same time, the city was growing exponentially, building a new downtown and trying to drive people into that downtown to help support the businesses that were starting and locating in that area. So we got out of the special event practice and let the city do it. The city is one of our funding partners, so we didn't want to compete with the city events. But then that allowed us to redirect the money that we were originally doing for special events to environmental stewardship programs, which we offer for free for the community. And changed the special events coordinator into a natural resources coordinator, and started doing more environmental stewardship volunteer programs and more programming in general, just to teach the public about our stewardship efforts and how they can contribute, whether through the park system or individually, and even at their own homes. So that's so special events doesn't apply to that because it falls outside of our realm of responsibility.
Michael, you've talked about, and I want to maybe just kind of go along the lines of how there's that, Carmel Clay, and I come from an agency that split or serves two jurisdictions as well. However, my agency is basically, even though we serve two, we're really answering to one elected official board. And so in your case, you had shared, it's there's some pluses and minuses. In your case, you've shared with me that you have some autonomy when it comes to your employees and your team and the benefits and some of the perks and whatnot.
Is it almost like a park district?
Yes, I was going to ask, do you associate more like a park district or a municipal agency?
We are a complete mutt. There's not anything that's quite like us. We are probably as close as you can get to being a park district without being one. We are technically, under Indiana law, a separate political subdivision. So we are separate from the city and the township. We were created by them, but are not a part of either of them, which is what gives us some of the autonomy. But both of them are responsible for helping towards our funding. So for our operating budget, our operating budget this year is approaching $18 million. $6 million of it is coming from the city of Carmel. Our capital budget right now is predominantly funded by Clay Township. So both of them are providing tax dollars to us to support our mission. But so they're providing those. The mayor of the city and the Clay Township trustee, which is the elected executive of the township, each appoint 4 board members to my 9-member board. And then our school board, which provides no funding, but we're closely related to through the before and after school program, self-appoints one of their members to my board. So we have, our board has policy setting authority. They have sole discretion over the revenues that we generate. And we have a number of enterprise funds that are solely funded. The community center has its own fund. The before and after school and summer camp program has its own fund. And as long as we don't have any tax dollars going into those funds, which we don't and haven't since for the before and after school program since 2006, 2007, the inception of the program, and for the community center since 2010, we've had no subsidies for our operations. So 3 years after the facility opened, the elected officials have no say over those budgets. So it lies solely with my park board. But I do have to report to the respective governing bodies of the city and township to secure the funding for the other ones, and have to talk and just like a city department, to get permission from council and from the mayor to be able to get the funding, or the township trustee and the township board for the capital funding. So I'm a little bit of both. It provides some autonomy, but it also keeps us closely connected. My position, for example, I'm hired by the park board. All of my employees are employees of the park board, myself included. We have our own tax ID. But I am hired by the park board with the consent of the mayor and trustee. And if they wanted me to go away, it takes all three of them to be in agreement to the park board and to elected executives. So again, it gives us a little bit of flexibility to be focused on what we do without being drawn 100% of the time into the politics of the city or the township. So it's worked very well for us. I think it's part of the secret sauce that has made Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation what we are today.
It's fascinating, and I'm sure we're going to have some listeners who will be very jealous of the situation. One quick follow up on that one, with the cost recovery, and even yourself included, does your team, is that funded based on that 100% cost recovery, or is there some administrative costs that the entities put towards for tax dollars towards?
So the way we do it, and first how we calculate cost recovery, is we look at all of our operating expenses and divide it by the operating revenue that we bring in, the self-generated revenue, not the tax dollars. And that's where we get our 85% plus or minus cost recovery rate. For us, basically all the staff that are necessary for the operations of the Monon Community Center, our community center and water park, and recreation programming in general is based out of that unit, recreation facilities. Those are covered by the user fees that we get from that, the memberships and the program registration fees. Same thing for the extended school enrichment, our after school program and summer camp program. Again, the user fees for that program cover all the staff that are associated with it. Now, my position, our maintenance related positions for parks and natural resources, our HR director, some of those functions are on the tax dollars and through our general fund. But in all practicality, our Monon Community Center, our Recreation Facilities Division, could be a standalone business effectively. Maybe they need to bring on some people to help with the HR. They contribute a little bit towards the marketing expenses. So there might be a few expenses they'd have to bring on, but not that many. They'd be pretty much self-contained. And same thing for our after school and summer camp program.
The Monon's an incredible facility. When we were at Indianapolis, I went and visited it. But first of all, it's funny. When I did that presentation and I was talking about my game of memory, I think I said that presentation while Michael was on the panel with me. So I don't know if you heard that twice or not.
Kind of a flashback there.
Yeah. But that was my first time to present with you. But what's funny is I had reached out to Michael before starting the Young Professional Network, and he was going to be one of my first panelists to talk about the need for a Young Professional Network. I had reached out before we started Young Professional Network. The presentation that kicked off the inertia that ultimately was the YPN was a presentation that I was working on with Michael and Tony Lopez out in Miami. Both of them, I think Michael had won, I think it was called the New Professional. It wasn't called Young in y'all state.
Right.
Yeah,
he had won. Yeah,
he was the New Professional of the Year, and Tony had just won the National Young Professional of the Year. And I was trying to create some sort of support for a YPN separate of the student branch, and had reached out to, just cold called them, knew nothing about them. It just talks about what our industry is, that you can just reach out to someone, say, I want to have you speak. And without ever talking to me, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so ultimately I submitted a session with them talking about the young professionals of NRPA and how they were underserved, and that ultimately got selected. And then staff didn't feel comfortable with that going out as it was framed, and so they gave us a YPN panel, and it kind of went from there. But my question is, Carmel Clay has done an incredible job fostering young professionals. When I think of Kate Meacham, who wasn't even Kate Meacham at the time, and she's the director in Allen now, and I think of Lindsay, who's in our YPN fam, who we cherish, and I even think of, I think this gal, I know nothing about her. You introduced me to her, I think in Indy, Michael, but I'm fascinated by her. Emma Lou?
Emma Lau, yeah.
Lau. I think she might be one of my, if we ever get asked our own, who's our 3 people to eat with, I think she would be one of mine because she seems super creative. She also seems super deep. Like, we did one of those who's going to NRPA, you know, as one of those, the faces of the YPN. Right. And everyone does a profile. And I wish I had hers in front of me. Everyone else is like 3 years here, 4 years here, graduated from here. And her profile was incredible. It was just like a lover of park spaces, a lover of people. Like, it was a mission statement. But y'all really cranked out an incredible amount. And I know I'm not listing others that you're probably thinking of in your head. How is an agency like Carmel Clay so prolific in what's the secret sauce? How do you foster young professionals in a way that they grow to be incredible professionals? Because I don't know if every agency is doing that well.
For us, I think a lot of it is empowering our staff to do what they do and not giving them the freedom to come up with their own ideas and to help contribute to our goals and priorities, and also having the freedom of knowing that if something doesn't go right, as long as we don't seriously injure someone, that it's okay to fail at something. Joe Wins, who used to be director of Indy Parks, next door to us, incredible guy. And he used to always say, if you fail fast, fix it and move on. I kind of have an additional step. I have that same thing. Failure in itself is not a major concern of mine, because as long as we don't do the same mistake over and over again, and we learn from it, then that's how we grow as an organization. So ensuring that our staff at all levels know that it's okay to make mistakes as long as we grow from it. And that's sort of my next step that Joe implies, but didn't explicitly say, is learn from it. And so I think doing that, providing a mechanism, and we have a process that we call our recommendations report. So, innovation, which we were talking about at the beginning, sometimes innovation is transformative and huge change. Sometimes it's incremental. But, if we're relying on me or my senior management team as the sole mechanisms for that innovation, we're not going to succeed as an organization. We're not going to succeed as a profession. So what I found, a number of years ago, we've probably had this in place now close to 10, 15 years, is initially my younger staff was sort of throwing up the problems to us instead of feeling empowered to come up with the solutions. And I think part of it was because maybe they didn't understand how to come up with solutions or how to think about things. So what we ask is, instead of just giving us an idea, and sometimes the ideas sound great or are great, but an idea in and of itself isn't going to do something that changes things. What is a well thought out plan, or at least a preliminary plan. So what we ask is, okay, come up with your idea. Tell me what problem you're trying to fix. Because sometimes we're trying to fix problems that aren't problems. So we need to be cognizant of that so that we're focusing our limited resources where we can. And then, usually every problem has several potential options as how it can be addressed. So we ask them to think about different ways to address that problem. We also ask them to look at how those different solutions impact the organization. So you might fix a problem that addresses our after-school program, but creates huge issues for our Parks and Natural Resources team. So, we have to realize that we're not just in these silos. And sometimes we can make changes that truly only impact one area and it doesn't have a ripple effect. But a lot of times if we make a change in compensation so that we're more competitive for our after-school program, if we get those wages up too high, then all of a sudden we've got full-timers that are making less than part-timers, and that creates its own set of challenges. So we have to look at that big picture and encourage staff to realize that sometimes when we make decisions or don't make decisions, it's because we're looking at that. So I'm hopeful that this process gives them a little bit of understanding of the thought processes that we use at a higher management level as well, and gives them that skills. And then, of course, because we are a cost recovery agency, we look at the bottom line. And every recommendation doesn't have to increase revenue. Sometimes it can reduce expenses. Sometimes it's cost neutral, and that's okay if it's enhancing experiences for our customers or improving efficiencies, which indirectly might impact the sustainability or the cost recovery of the agency. But I think we've given them those tools to do so. Another thing that we do is we are not afraid to invest in our staff, to go to NRPA, to go to state conference, to go to director school. We've had a number of our especially senior management team that we've paid for them to go to director school, because while they're not directors yet, some of our team, our recreation facilities division, which covers our community center, water park, and our general recreation programming, their budget is larger than most of the park systems in the state of Indiana. Right. So, they're running a small parks department then in and of themselves. And, ultimately, like a Kate Meacham, like some of the other people, I fully expect that their next opportunity, it's clear that Kate wanted to be a director someday. She's, well qualified for that and doing great things in each of the steps that she's had to get to Allen now. And, to me, there's nothing better than hopefully providing an environment where they're empowered to use their skills to put their stamp on the agency while they're here or while they're moving through the program, through the agency. And if the next step is ultimately somewhere else, I applaud them for that, because then, we've helped them build as individuals and professionals. Hopefully we've contributed to the agency. And I think I've heard on at least one of your other podcasts talking about a coaching tree. I mean, to me, it's kind of a sense of pride, whether I've directly or indirectly had an impact as an agency to help them get to where they are today. And I'm super excited too. We've had a number of people like the Kates that have moved on, like the Lindsay that's now with, the Indy 500 Festival,
Indy
which
500.
is associated with the Indianapolis 500, the events around that. But we've had a number of people too that have grown up through the system. My recreation and facilities director started as an intern and has worked almost every position in the community center. Our assistant recreation facilities director started as a lifeguard, and even before that was part of the public input process, part of the kids that helped us design our skate park. He'll be the first to admit that he maybe had some challenges as a kid, and we helped make sure that he was in a safe and productive place so that he could thrive and become the incredible person that he is today. Not that he wasn't an incredible person before, he was, but being able to grow through the system certainly has been a part of his life story. And we have a lot of other people that have grown through the system. And I think it is just the systems and the willingness to let them do their job. Because if I have to do their job, or my senior management team has to do their jobs for them, then I'm not getting anything done, and we're not able to accomplish everything that we do. And I think part of that comes from my mindset. I've been fortunate. My position in Lafayette Parks as marketing manager, that was a newly created position that I was fortunate to hire. And I've got a story about that too. My position as recreation center director for the city of Rolla, Missouri, 100 miles west of St. Louis, 100 miles east of Springfield, where Jody was. Slogan was middle of everywhere, which of course means middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. They built an incredible 63,000 square foot community center, had a small leisure water park type thing. Water park's too strong of a word, but great for the community of 16,000 at the time. But that was a newly created position. I was responsible for putting together the business plan and bring on the staff. And then my first role in Carmel was as assistant director, which again was a newly created position. And I think because of my experiences with that, we try to provide the training for our staff so that they can succeed, but we also try to give them the space, because I've also myself not had any guidebook or rule book as to what we're supposed to do. And I don't want to give and limit our staff so much from the rules. And this is coming from someone that's a big supporter of capital, which is all about rules, to be able to put their own stamp on it and succeed in their own way. So I think it's a blend, hopefully, of all of those that has helped us be a place where our team can learn and thrive and grow through the organization and grow beyond the organization.
And I'll add to that, Michael, because one of our current employees here in Mecklenburg came from your department. And Michael, his name's Matt Worley. You know Matt really well, I'm sure. Matt is one of those, just like you mentioned, you give them the opportunity to grow internally, and they can take the opportunity to grow externally as well. And Matt's done a great job in our department. He is the manager of our Sportsplex, which actually just last year won a national award for the facilities over there. It's a massive sports complex. It's got 12 turf fields. It's got a natural grass field as well that hosts collegiate games, high school games, a variety of different things. And I think what it comes down to, and kind of everything you're talking about, is the culture. And I actually have a printout in my office, and I've had it in my office for 10 years now, about the culture of Carmel Clay. And I think it says at the bottom, connect the dots, or connect the dot. And it's, a list of different dots and statements that your department kind of thrives off of, and setting the tone for the staff to have a culture that is open and challenging, and a bit of giving them the ability to grow and make decisions. I think that's what really is provided so much growth and success for your staff. And I don't know if that was a team effort with that culture statement, or if that was done from a leadership perspective. If you want to talk about that for a second, I've looked at it numerous times over the years, and I love seeing it.
Absolutely. So it very much was a team-driven thing. I mean, can't say every part-timer was involved in it, but our full-time staff was involved in coming up with what was part of our culture statement. And we've evolved from that. We've got still very much embracing those same principles. But in 2019, before COVID, we had a all-team survey of all of our staff and stuff to get an idea of what our priorities are as an organization, and what our shared values are. And we came up with sort of an abbreviated version, so it's a little bit simple for all of us to remember, as opposed to all the dots that we had, which is called HIVE. So, we're looking to be a holistic, inclusive, visionary, and ecological agency. And if you look at everything that's behind those, it's tied and hasn't really changed from the culture that we had before, the culture statement that we had before. But it's something that we from holistic, the whole is greater than. I mean, we're a collection of different individuals working together. We're also here to serve the whole community, inclusive, which is our way of bringing in sort of those DEI initiatives. I'm in a red state, so if I say DEI, I might get roadblocks put upon me that work against us trying to achieve that goal, which has always been baked into our organization. But inclusive is something that isn't near as scary for some individuals, and it allows us to accomplish the same thing, but ensuring that we're serving people with disabilities and everyone. We're a place for everyone. And, visionary sort of goes to that goal of always looking at things in a different way, and doing that transformative as well as incremental change to innovation to continue to do things differently. Because if we continue to do what we do today and rest upon our laurels, ultimately we're not going to be the type of agency that we are. We've got to continue to change. And ecological, we're part of, again, something bigger, but that environmental focus and beyond just pure stewardship, but looking about how what we do impacts the environment as well as our community at large. So, but it's all driven by staff, and it's something that we created based on the feedback that we had from our employees that makes it easier for us to have that shared culture. Another thing that we've more recently implemented, we were starting to do this before COVID, and then especially needed it post-COVID, is we have a culture committee. And their sole focus is, it's always been my goal for Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation to be an employer of choice. And what I mean by that is a place that employees want to work, a place that people feel proud being an employee of, and support what we do. Doesn't mean that there aren't going to be bad days or bad timeframes. But, by and large, we're proud of what we do, and we want to be a part of it. And the culture committee is tasked with and given the autonomy and the authority to come up with ideas to ensure that we're reaching out to our different employees. And we're an organization, we've got 74 full-time positions, but we have over 600 total positions, part-timers, seasonal. During the summer, we're close to 650. We actually employ almost as many people as the city of Carmel itself, which is a community of 103,000 approximately. But they're coming up with ideas. Like in March, we'll have a pancake breakfast where all the senior management is cooking food for our team members to let them know how much we appreciate it. But that's coordinated and was the idea of our culture committee. We have a variety of different clubs that our employees can participate on. We have a trivia night. We have, a reading club. We have a walking club and a variety of other things that have been self-organized and organic so that our employees that have shared interests can, many of our employees want to be a part of something bigger than just their job. They want to be a part of a community, and we are, as an employer, a type of community itself. So trying to ensure that we can do that.
We have seen culture and community grow as a facet of leadership. Just, I don't know, I think in the last 5 to 10 years with agencies. From a leadership perspective, what is something you didn't pay attention to enough early on in your career that you had to learn the hard way later?
So early in my career, I'll tell you one thing I did right and maybe one thing I did wrong.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's time to think about the one thing I did wrong. I've certainly done some, don't get me wrong. One of the things that I did right is I've always been a researcher. I'm a person that when I come into a new position, I want to know as much about the agency as possible. I want to understand how they got to where they are today. I did that for each of my previous employers and before I came here as well, which has allowed me to be more acclimated and at least have a baseline understanding that certainly evolves as you get integrated into the organization. But I think that laid the foundation for the successes I've had in my various positions. One thing that I had to learn is sometimes you do have to pay attention to the details. I am a generally detail-oriented person, but I also have never been one that's afraid to delegate. And early in my career in Lafayette, we put together our first, this was before, websites were as prominent as they are today and social media and stuff. So printed materials still played a key role in helping inform the community. And we put together this facilities guidebook that talked about all of our parks and amenities that we have. And I worked with an intern, and I was frustrated with the intern, but I worked on the image of things, but I didn't pay attention to the words. And then we get it right before I go on vacation. We're putting it out, and I come back, and all of the books are removed from all of our literature racks. And I'm like, what is going on? And then my manager at the time, it's like, we're going to have these all reprinted because there are there are typos and misspellings throughout. It looked incredible, but I didn't pay enough attention to the details within it. And, I was relatively new in the position. They could have very easily said, the amount that we spent on it was, for a new marketing department was a lot.
Sure. And
we had to come up with ways to do the next round for all the ones that went in the recycling bin, much cheaper. But, they allowed that to be a growing opportunity for me. So I try to remember that there are appropriate times to look at the details, regardless of what role you are. But there are also appropriate times to empower and let your staff do what they need to do.
So, Michael, I think without us even asking directly, you just really painted a pretty nice picture and maybe wrote a little book on retention. And I know that, so basically fostering that culture, allowing people a comfortable place to fail or succeed and encouraging growth. So even if that means getting them to the next step, if it's not with you or it is with Carmel. So we like to play some games here as we kind of approach
Mhm.
the end of our episode, and I want to keep. I never tell Jay and Shane. I just like to keep you all on your feet as well, so or on your toes. So we're gonna call this segment "Reimagination with Michael." All right. So
Hey,
you are the like I said before, keeping along the themes of that innovation and reimagination. We're going to throw out a topic, and if you can just give us a couple quick hitters on how you have reimagined that topic, which might be a typical topic in the professional realm or parks and recreation specific. So I'm going to start with you. Like I said, you pretty much wrote us the book on retention. Aside from us showing the world this amazing interview and you putting together a public service announcement and a commercial, what is your reimagination for recruitment in today's day and age, which is very difficult?
For us, I think as an industry, as well as Carmel Clay as an employer, is making sure that we're in tune with what employees today want and expect from their employer. We can't have systems in place like we were when each of us were hired, me even before some of you, and expect that that's going to work for today's workforce, including people that are our own age. Our expectations of work life balance, our expectations for being being a part of something that's bigger than just your organization, making an impact, especially people that tend to gravitate to parks and recreation. I think we need to be in tune with that, to be flexible enough to ensure that we are creating the workspace that employees expect, whether they're working for a parks and recreation agency or they're working for Target and Starbucks. In some ways we're competing with those same organizations, especially for our part-time staff. So making sure that we're providing the things and being the work environment that employees today expect. And that's sometimes hard to do in a governmental format, because we're kind of designed to go along in a very, we're not designed for rapid change and stuff, but we've got to be prepared. And I think Parks and Recreation as a field is much more prepared than most governmental components. But we've got to be able to pivot much quicker and ensure that we're providing the type of work experiences that employees today expect.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think what comes to mind is work from home policies or less than the typical 5-day work week, which we have 6 or 7-day work weeks. You know what I mean? So it is quite the challenge, not only in a municipal setting or a district setting, but also in Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
Jay?
Oh, and that work from home too is something that we continue to struggle with, because most of our positions are positions that you have to literally be here to be able to do.
Yeah.
There are a handful of positions that don't, but it's like, we have a work from home policy, so there are appropriate circumstances that we feel that works well. But we also, recognizing that most of our employees can't do that, we've set it up so we're not as, and this is one where maybe we're a little bit different, especially from IT related or marketing related fields where you have a little bit more flexibility. But we also try to explain, it's like, because if we're not here, we can't provide the services that we do. And our employees need for those entities that are positions that can work remotely, they need that same degree of connectivity that's best done when we're working together. If you don't want to work together, you probably shouldn't be in Parks and Recreation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, we talked at length earlier about the cost recovery model and the facilities that you have and that you're building with the playground. What about from the customer experience? I think if you have a cost recovery goal, or you're building top-notch, or you have top-notch facilities, you have to set the customer experience has to be remarkable. So what have you done in Carmel Clay to make sure that's always remarkable when someone comes back to the water park and the community center?
Without exceptional customer service, you can't achieve cost recovery, whatever your cost recovery mandate is. And for us, it's always trying to, one, make sure that we're reinvesting in our facilities. For those of you that were able to visit our community center in 2018 when conference was last in town, hopefully, even though at that point it was 15 years old, it felt pretty new. Mm. And that's always been our goal, is to ensure that we are protecting and reinvesting in the assets for which the community has invested their public dollars. So constantly reinvesting, keeping everything in great shape so that, and getting the latest things, whether it's a new playground or updating our fitness equipment on a timely schedule, or looking at the new programs that we're offering, especially fitness or aquatics related, which are two of our bigger revenue drivers, making sure that we're staying relevant and current on those things. And two, then providing and always working to improve our customer service, our training, so that our employees can provide that customer service. Sometimes we're better at it. Sometimes we have opportunities for growth, but we're always looking at our training to ensure that we can best position our staff to provide the customer service that, and we typically refer to them as customers. I mean, yes, they're constituents, but we're serving more than the residents of Carmel and Clay Township. We're serving as a regional provider of parks and recreation services. So, ensuring that our customers are willing to spend their discretionary time and income with us. So investment in training and investment in the physical assets to ensure that people are willing to spend the money for them.
For my question, as far as what you reimagine, this may bleed over a little into some of the things you've already said. I think Parks and Rec is ever changing, obviously, but I think it's also changed in the way we're viewed as from our peers, our colleagues in these other cities. And I think when I think of this function, when I think of executive function, I think of you and others have done a great job on it. So how have you re-envisioned executive function? Because we're an industry that directors can get away with hoodies and shorts, but they are taxed for that in some ways during budget. They're taxed for that in some ways when you're asking for new people, because they're just the thumb of government. They're the goofy folks that make sure everyone's having a little fun. And so how do you continue to be the service providers that y'all are, but also have a high executive function compared to other departments?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing with that is trying to always be honest in what you're saying, whether you're talking to your staff, whether you're talking to constituents or customers, whether you're talking to elected officials or the appointed park board. Always being honest and being consistent in that manner, so that whether it's a good news or bad news or something in between, they know that what you're telling you is truly representative of how you understand it. Doesn't mean that you don't try to always put the best light on things, but
Sure.
At the same point, always being truthful, so that you have at the different levels, from community to elected official to mayor, you have that degree of trust that and respect, that when you're saying something, that they know that it's true. I think it makes it easier to make decisions, both hard and bad, and to advocate for those additional dollars when appropriate, or making the tough decisions.
Your cost recovery and some of your data on users and how much usage your facilities get probably have to help as well, I'd imagine.
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, one of the things that's helpful, and for the first time in 28 years, we have a new mayor. Previous mayor was incredibly supportive of Parks and Recreation, but the new mayor is equally supportive of Parks and Recreation. I mean, she's been on the job literally 1 month and 2 days. So we're still learning, but she was on our city council for 12 years. So we have a long history with her. But, she's all about data-driven decisions. And that's another thing that has always been at the forefront of what we do. We're constantly trying to understand what the community as well as the public wants and expects from us. And then, when we do comprehensive master plans, they're not exercises to get a check mark for CPRE. They are truly living, breathing documents that serve as a 5-year marching order as to what we're striving for. Doesn't mean that we don't pivot and bend to opportunities that you simply can't envision in the planning process. But because of the robust public input that we get, and I love some of the things, Shane, that you put together in Pflugerville, some things that I'll look to implement in the next week, because we're finishing up our current master plan, so I can't do it now. But making sure that we understand what the community wants, so that we're delivering and meeting their expectations, and making decisions based on that. But I think being an effective executive, being able to navigate the things is being truthful and also knowing your facts, so that when you're talking and advocating for things, that whether people agree or disagree with you, they know that you're saying what you believe, and there's a sound reason for you to do so, and that works at all levels.
Just following up off the mayor, I think I don't know the mayor, but 27 years, and I know the mayor was a fan of innovation because we were watching something on Pflugerville City Leadership Group was watching something on roundabouts, and Carmel Clay came up as they had more roundabouts than the average European city or something like that. Like, but it was driven from the mayor, and so has that 27 years. Do you feel like, and I know you're a bit of a district, so he's only somewhat supportive as far as your overall impact, but a different mayor with term limits and different, everyone coming in with a different priority, did that tenure help in some ways for y'all facility to get where you're at?
It did, because you had a continuity in the leadership at the city level. We had several trustees during that same time frame, but even the trustees that we had, were at least 2 years to 4 years. So there's been a lot of stability at the executive level within the community. So that's been extremely helpful. Our organizational structure too, the mayor had the best deal for Parks and Recreation because so when I came on board, I was the 11th full-time employee and we had an operating budget of under $2 million, 85% funded by the taxpayers. Today, we're closer to a $16+ million operating budget, 85% self-funded. Most of the capital dollars over those years since I've been here and a little bit before I came, or most of the history of the park system, have come from the township. The city's level of contribution for our operations has gone from, about $1.5 million to $6 million in 20 years. We are the best deal that they have.
Yeah.
So, the mayor was in a position where he gave us the space to be able to do what we needed to do. And had the trust in us to do that. And if he had concerns, he wasn't shy about telling us. But, in the 5 years, there wasn't a lot of, you need to do this, you need to do that. He just gave us the space to do what we do because his belief was he could just, screw it up. And that's really appreciative to have that level of confidence. And
You don't have a badge number that says 11, by the way, does it?
I do not. 2250. So.
Oh, okay.
But that continuity has been tremendous to what we are as both a city as well as a park system. And it's definitely contributed. And it's also exciting to see a new mayor after those 28 years too, because she's bringing in new ideas. I mean, we attended a all-city
four-way stops, for example. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll go back to that. There'd be a revolt if we went back to four-way stops or stoplights. What's kind of cool to see is she invited our employees to attend the city all city employee meeting just because she wants us to feel less like the redheaded stepchild, which in that we're not truly city employees because we're not, but she wants us to feel more involved and part of a bigger part of the community and be informed as to changes. She was also talking about a whole bunch of systems that she wants to change within the city to bring it up to current standards, talking about culture, talking about marketing, talking about efficiencies and those type of things. And everything she was talking about are the things that we've already implemented. So it was cool to go back to my team and say, a lot of what you heard pertains to the city and not to us because we've already doing it. They're emulating us. We're not following them. So that was cool, kind of cool to see. But also having a new mayor coming in with new ideas, which will only continue to push us to innovate further. So I'm excited about both the continuity that we had in the past and the prospect of change from the new mayor too.
Well, Michael, we're excited to see what is to come from you and Carmel Clay. I had no doubt that this would be an amazing conversation, and it certainly turned out to be. Before I let you go today, or before we let you go, do you have any horse in the race that we know of as the Super Bowl? Or will you, are you not going to watch it, because, hey, Patrick Mahomes is in there and they beat the Bills? Is there any, sorry, Jay, I had to. Any horse in the race?
I don't understand why that has to come up.
For me, it's a great Super Bowl because I just don't really have any strong allegiance to either of the teams. Being a Midwest boy through and through, I will lean towards the Chiefs. I had the opportunity to work 2 years in Missouri, so I'll go with the Chiefs.
Nice.
I'm sure that's an unpopular choice among at least one of our guests here, our panelists, our hosts. But very, very fun. Thanks for indulging us in a fun question. And Michael, just in general, thank you for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation today.
Well, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your podcast. I mean, it truly. I mean, I've been listening to your set or your previous podcast. I've really found it incredibly enjoyable to listen to hear, people that I look up to and feel, incredibly inferior to in many ways. To listen to their stories and in this, more laid back atmosphere, it's been fun for me, and it was fun to be a part of it. And I just feel honored to make it on. Episode number 25 in my 25th year in the profession. So
he knew about it before we even announced it. When I was talking to him, I was talking to him and Ryan on a Zoom, and it was one of those that we used to try to tell people, have you ever heard of Smartless? And then everyone's like, no. And it's like, okay, we got to stop trying that or whatever. But yeah, that was the conversation that happened at the time. But yeah, thanks for coming on. This was great.
Yeah, thank you. It's always great catching up and seeing you.
Likewise. Always good to see you too. Y'all take care.
All right. Have a good weekend, Michael.
We'll see you. Bye.
All right.
Great
episode.
Guest.
Yeah. Michael's great. I knew you had him. There was no doubt in my mind he was on both of your lists. So I tried to give him an early window into season 2 to see if I can get him to bite.
That's awesome.
And he did.
Great job.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so smart. He's so intelligent, and he can articulate better than most exactly the vision of what he's doing and what he's trying to achieve. I think that's sometimes for me, what I am most in awe of other people isn't how they get from point A to point B, but how they articulate a team to get to point A to point B. And I think he knows what he's wanting to do. He knows what he's wanting to accomplish, and he's incredible at getting that team to move in the direction he needs them to move. And what a great department that he's been with over the years. And it's grown under his leadership for sure.
There's a handful of other topics that I would have loved to get into, but there's so much we can talk about. And, he mentioned it super brief about CPRE, and him and I were on the CPRE board together for several years. And that's how I really got to know him. And it was great kind of learning from him and his view on things from a CPRE perspective. And, he's been a trendsetter for that area for a long time. So he's just a great overall professional to talk to.
Yeah.
Very humble also, he talks with the most knowledge that you could get out of a person in a conversation, and you really don't feel that way, that he's trying to tell you that basically he knows it all. And
he's not trying to be the smartest dude in the room, but he's normally the smartest dude in the room. Yeah, absolutely. Another legacy, by the way.
Yeah, second generation.
Continue to compound those as well. I don't know if there's more legacies out there and we just don't realize it. I would have never thought we have a lot, but we sure have a lot of guests who have some tie to another person, which is cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the success, of course, of Carmel Clay. It comes through, but 2 gold medals since he's been, with Carmel Clay. And first time they went out for it, 2014, went and got it. And then 6 years later, 2020, 2 for 2. So I talked to him before our episode. 2026 is around the corner, and you could be sure that they're going for it. But
that's incredible because a lot of people put their name in there so they can get 2 or 3 years of feedback. And for them to be eligible and nail it both times they first apply, first application, I'd love to know how many people in RPA's had that over the years, because there couldn't be many.
No, that seems to be a trend, is like it always takes people 2 or 3 years, or in some cases 4 years. Yeah. I remember having that conversation this year in Dallas with Michael Kirschman, and it was, Virginia Beach was a finalist for 3 straight years. And then it finally, came over the hump. And when we won it from Mecklenburg and Anaheim, it was the 3rd straight year being a finalist. So that's very, very impressive.
I don't know the size of Carmel Clay, but whoever's thinking about applying in 2026, get your app in 2025, because the year that if they bubble up in your class,
it's gonna be tough.
Just you just hope they win, so then you've got a couple more years to get to it afterwards, because that's a hard out right there. If you're up against them, that's a tough one. That's a really well ran department. It's an incredible department.
Yep.
All right, guys, we'll let you both go. Again, thank you. Shout out to Michael and Carmel Clay. We look forward to seeing you all in our next episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on RecLess.
See you, fellas.
See you guys.